Hey guys, so welcome back to the channel. Today I wanted to give a brief talk about, or kind of ask a question and then explore this question with you about what must have happened to somebody to make them do something really horrible, what you see as really horrible. Before I get into the talk though, if you enjoy this talk, please give me a like or a thumbs up. If you like this kind of spiritual related content and talks, 432 hertz music, we have a lot of variety on the channel here. Please subscribe. And if you have any questions for me, any comments, I always love to hear from you in the comments, whether you're on Facebook, Instagram, YouTube, really doesn't matter. Okay, so today I want to ask you the question, and you may not have ever really stopped to think about this. What must have been someone's experience for them to end up doing something that you see as truly horrific? So now it doesn't really matter if this is something that's happened to us personally, or if this is something that's happened, in the news. You hear about it in the news. You hear about it from another person. Someone tells you a story of something really horrible that's happened to them. So the tendency of our ego is simply to go to the explanation that that is what we would call a horrible person. They're evil, they're a sinner, they're horrible, whatever it is. Well, there's another way of looking at this, a more spiritual way, which is to ask the question of what must have happened to that person to cause them to think that what they did was a good idea. Now, I'm not going to get into whether or not what they did was truly evil or not. We could talk a lot about that. That's a whole nother question. Very often, what we personally may see as evil or bad, someone else may not. Very quick example is here in the States, we circumcise our men and we don't think twice about it. In some other countries, they do what they call genital mutilation to women, and we in this culture think that's horrible. Well, if you think it's so horrible, maybe you should look up a male circumcision and see what that looks like with a little baby. And it can be quite a horrific thing to watch. I think there are some videos online that you can watch. And again, because we do it here, we think it's normal. We don't think twice about it. But there's a lot of talk today about toxic masculinity and all the problems with men. And I agree. I think men are struggling right now. And I think women are struggling. Honestly, I think we're all struggling. And so, again, if men are the problem, I think many people might see it that way. And again, I'm not saying they are or they aren't. Okay? If men are the problem, what has happened to men in our culture to make them the problem? Are men simply born evil? Well, that would mean that half of our species is really problematic. How do we get so far if half of our species is such a problem? So I don't really look at things this way. I don't think Jesus or Buddha looked at things this way. I think they would ask the question, again, what was done to this person? What must have happened to this person to turn them into what they are? So again, in the States, with men, we start off life with a very possibly traumatic experience. Now, some people would say, oh, that doesn't count, you don't remember it, all this kind of stuff. I'm not so sure, okay? So again, I don't want to harp on that particular thing. I want you in your own life to consider and to think about the people who have wronged you, the people who have done things that, again, you think are maybe unforgivable. In fact, things are so divided here in the United States that you may even see people on the other side of the political aisle as being unforgivable, completely evil. just people that you simply could not relate to. But I think if you were to actually get to know more people on the other side of the aisle, and when I say that, I don't mean that because you may personally know a few people who are on the other side of the political aisle and think they're real jerks, but that's because you don't really know them. You haven't really actually taken the time to get to know them, to understand their perspective. This is very different than having a passing conversation or hearing their comments at the Thanksgiving table. So, what must have been the experience of somebody who ends up on the opposite side of the political aisle? What would have to have happened to you for you to end up there? What kind of experiences must have you had? Now, again, the tendency of the ego is simply to say, well, that would never happen to me. I would never do that. But what spiritual teaching teaches us on a very deep level is ultimately we are all one. We're all the same. Our fundamental ground of our being is identical. So when you see someone else doing something, ultimately they're probably got there through a series of experiences that, if you had been put through them, may have ended up in a very similar result. Now, of course, there are different people with different temperaments. So sometimes children who are born in the same family, they have similar experiences. One of the children comes out almost traumatized, or maybe even traumatized by those experiences. Another child comes out much more resilient. So again, I'm not saying that experience is the only thing. But again, when we go beyond even our genetics, when we go beyond even our thought process, our mind, what we find at the core of all of existence is a fundamental, I can't call it an experience because experience is actually contained within it. We find a fundamental ground upon which all experience arises and happens, from which the experience comes and plays out and also disappears in. This fundamental ground is the same in all of existence. It is not different. There are not two. There is just this one. And that is within you, and it is within everyone else. And so this is why people who have had deep spiritual realization tend to be much more forgiving. They tend to turn the other cheek, so to speak. They tend to have compassion instead of judgment, right? They tend to say, well, what must have happened to this poor soul to make them do something like that? Rather than, oh, what a wretched person. They're just evil and bad. Now, the interesting thing for us is if we choose to, we can begin to think in this way. Maybe we haven't had a great, deep spiritual realization, but we can begin to think in this way, and by doing so, actually lead ourselves toward that kind of realization, toward that kind of experience. And this is called Jnana Yoga. Jnana Yoga is yoga of your mind, of wisdom, of studying scripture. Listening to a talk like this is Jnana Yoga. Very, very powerful. And the beautiful thing about Jnana Yoga is you don't need a yoga mat to do it. You don't have to go to a yoga studio. You can practice all the time throughout your life. So I want you to think about right now in your life, who is someone who you want to see as just a horrible, wretched person? And can you, with compassion and empathy, ask the question, well, what must have happened to this person to make them the way that they are? And by doing so, begin to create a bridge for communication and understanding. Again, I can't speak for the rest of the world, but I know here in the States there's a lot of division and a lot of misunderstanding and a lot of finger pointing going on. And this really isn't good for us as a nation. And we have to live with one another, and we have to build things together. And so compassion, empathy, understanding is needed on both sides. And as a spiritual seeker, as a student of mind, if you consider yourself a student of mind, you don't wait for the other guy. You don't say, well, I'll wait till they are trying to understand me. No, it's not the way that it works. You always take responsibility. And I know that can be a hard road to walk, but it's a very rewarding road to walk. All right, guys, so I hope you got something from that. If you have any experiences with this, please leave it in the comments below. Again, I love hearing from you guys. Even if it's a short comment, even if it's just a hello, say hello. All right. Again, the likes and thumbs up really do help with social media, promoting things. You may not know that, but when you give a like, when you leave a comment, when you subscribe, the algorithms in Facebook and YouTube, they push the videos up, and so more people get to see it. So if you get something from this, help push it along, help pay it forward by giving the thumbs up and the like and leaving a comment. And by all means, again, if you like this kind of content, subscribe to the channel. So thank you so much, and until next time, namaste.